Hi everyone, and thank you for joining the Delaware SBDC and Anchor Security for our monthly Data Assured webinars. My name is Jake Blackston, and I'm the Technology Business Advisor here at the Delaware SBDC. In short, the Data Assured program is designed to provide free training and awareness in cybersecurity for all small businesses. To strengthen our efforts, we collaborated with Anchor Security to bring you monthly webinars that cover all areas of cybersecurity. So, let me go ahead and pass it on off to the Anchor Security team to discuss what we'll be learning today. Anchor Security team, have at it.
All right, Jamie, why don't you take it away?
All right. Well, hello, everybody, and I want to welcome you to our Anchor Security Team webinar, our second webinar. We're going to be talking about security as a lifestyle. Let me introduce our team to you first. My name is Jamie. I'm one of the co-founders, and I have my doctorate in organizational leadership. Also a small business owner, having started and owned several small businesses. I'm also an adjunct professor of organizational leadership at Luther Rice. And also Dan Goodman is on with us. He is one of our other co-founders as well. And he is the Department of Energy Cyberforce Champion. Congratulations, Dan. He is a cyber security scholar at the University of Delaware and a national award-winning cybersecurity writer. And then also with us is Connor Swam, another one of our co-founders at Anchor Security Team. He has his Bachelor's of Science in Mathematics, and he also has started and owned several businesses. And then with us is Dr. Andrew Novason. He's another one of our co-founders. His doctorate is in mathematics. He is a professor at the University of Delaware, and he is the director of the VIP and Cyber Scholars for the University of Delaware. And so we're happy to be bringing these webinars to you in partnership with the Small Business Development Center. So let's go ahead. Let's jump right in. Dan, why don't you start us off with security as a lifestyle?
Thank you, Jamie. So our topic today is security as a lifestyle. And what we mean by that is considering cybersecurity at every point in your life or business operation. And that's pretty important because an attack is going to come from any angle that you leave vulnerable. If we relate online bad actors to something that you might see more with your eyes, would be like porch pirates, taking opportunity they can find to grab your packages off your front porch. Or similarly, if you leave an office or home unlocked, it's just easily accessed and you may experience unwanted guests. One example that we saw a few years ago, which was pretty groundbreaking for physical security, was the German defense minister's fingerprints were actually copied by a high-resolution photo that was taken of her in public. And this brings up a lot of really important topics to the security world because, we have to think now people are pretty capable of recreating fingerprints purely based on high-resolution photos. And now that we have copying of biometric authentication in the game, what do we have to consider when we think of access to phones, buildings, and safes that use these fingerprint readers that people can now copy? And then we also have to figure out how we protect our own biometric data. Do we wear gloves in public to protect against fingerprint copying? Do we have to wear special face masks to protect against facial recognition and facial modeling now that we have phones that use our faces to unlock them? And even though many countries are already banning government use of facial recognition, people are just still using it all over the place. For example, if you've ever heard about FaceApp recently gaining popularity, when they could take pictures of themselves looking like the other gender or looking really old, and you may have seen those all over Facebook or social media feeds. Well, what people didn't look into is in the terms and conditions, they were able to take your pictures and reconstruct a model of your face. So now a Russian company that owns FaceApp has 150 million Americans' facial models in their database because no one looked at the privacy policy. So it's really important to think about that kind of stuff. But while you yourself are probably not going to experience fingerprint and facial reconstruction in digital forms, we have to think of what's more related to a small business. So something for a small business would be keys, like physical keys that you carry with you to unlock doors and stuff. It's actually extremely easy to take pictures of keys that are just laying on a desk or hanging on your hips or you're swinging around in your hand. If I get a half decent picture of a key, someone can copy a perfect replica without you ever knowing. And that's something we're going to talk about more later. But the really important takeaway here is that while someone like the German defense minister has security at the forefront of their mind, if they were exposed in this medium, how exposed do you think you might be as a small business? It's a really important question to consider. So some more common physical vulnerabilities would be what we talked about, leaving keys visible and accessible, leaving doors unlocked and unsecured. Even though you may secure a door with a lock, depending on how you install that lock, how you install the door. Do you have a slip key guard across the door that protects people from using jam keys and slip keys to opening it through the cracks? Do you have a secure mail drop? Do you know for a fact that when someone delivers mail to you, the second it gets to you, it's secure, or is it kind of just sitting out in the open on the front porch or on a back porch or near a loading dock? Another really important one is physical security for digital devices. So stuff like computers, but also stuff like printers, electronics boxes, routers. These are really important because not only can people get their hands on them and start messing with them, but they can see all the information going across them. And then the last, and it's kind of an age-old one, is physical documents left out unattended. If you have very sensitive documents that you just left on the front desk or left on your desk and walked away, they are now very able to be seen by other people. Now, talking about the key copying that I mentioned before, these are two diagrams that locksmiths use when they want to recreate keys to get into your house. The top one is measurement of what's called bit depth to get something what's called a bit code. Bit depth just tells you how deep each of the notches in the keys are, and they give you exact measurements so you know how to cut them. And then the bit code is what we use the bottom graph for, and that tells you, the sequence of numbers that describes your key. And if I can just take your key and line that bottom graph up with the tail of the key, I can, measure the bit depth and get the bit code of your key and just recreate it through an online key creation service, or even like Home Depot or something. So it's really easy. Another example that I mentioned before was leaving your computer unlocked and unattended. Bad USB attacks are really severe threats that you have to consider. And I actually wrote a blog post about this on our blog. The link will be in the description if you want to go check it out in more detail. But essentially, if you leave your computer unlocked, someone can just quickly plug in a USB drive. 2-3 seconds later, they have full control of your computer, and it doesn't look like anything ever happened. This is really important because not only do you have to worry about, your customers or anyone accessing your computers and doing this, but you also have to worry about people in your company that may now have access to certain information that they didn't before. And that's another topic we'll talk about later down the line when we talk about insider threats as well. Another one of the fundamental points in security as a lifestyle is the supply chain. Now, if you're in a business that has a physical product, you may know a lot about the supply chain, but for those of you who don't know, the supply chain is basically every step in the process of getting material or an idea delivered to your customers as the product. So an example might be going from a specific earth material to a factory, to an assembly facility, then to you, then to your customers. So every step in the process is a link in the supply chain. Now, I'll go back to that slide. About, I think a year ago, this is dated October 8th, 2018. So a little less than a year ago, Supermicro, an American servers company that has their servers made in China, experienced the most severe supply chain hack in recent history. Essentially what happened is that the chips that were being put into the server, one extra was added in by the Chinese manufacturers, and this chip gave China remote access to all the servers. Now, what's really important is that these servers were being used by some of the largest tech companies in America, most notably Apple and Amazon. So what we learned from this supply chain hack was that there were, backdoors in pretty much all Supermicro servers that were used by these giant companies like Apple and Amazon. And what that meant is now your activity, along with millions of other people, could be monitored by these bad actors. And not only were these companies now insecure, but because you used these services, you were then inherently insecure. And the biggest takeaway as a small business to think about from this event is that people probably aren't going to switch from Apple or Amazon from some event like this. I know I still shop on Amazon. I still use Apple products because I love them. But you have to consider your customers and your clients. If something of this scale were to happen to you, would they switch from your business to someone else? Do you have that locking audience to your business? So now we want to talk about how you can secure your supply chain. Well, the first thing we suggest is use the most reputable services and third parties you can find. You have to consider how trusted your manufacturer and your shipping company and everyone in between you and the customer is. And you also have to review their privacy and security practices and policies. Do they match up with something you agree with? Is there something really concerning? Are they collecting data that they shouldn't be? Are they, inserting themselves in a position to gain information that you wouldn't like them or your customers would not like them to have? And essentially, do you truly know the full chain from the most fundamental piece of your product to the customer's door? A simple one is just to reduce the amount of links in the chain. Eliminating middlemen eliminates points of insecurity and points of failure. Simplicity is key here. And then also proper disposal of information. Do you just shred your documents? Do you burn them? Do you put them in a special bin that's locked and then someone comes and picks them up and they claim that they shred them and incinerate them? Do you know for a fact that those documents are getting properly disposed of? It's fairly easy to just slip the delivery guy $100 and take a few documents out of his entire shipping run for that day. Now, the third and final one that we're going to talk about, and this is essentially a third and a fourth, so 2 in 1, was the recent Capital One breach that happened like 2 weeks ago. You may have heard about this, you may have not, but essentially what happened here is that 100 million customers of Capital One, their information was compromised similar to how Equifax was. And this was due to 2 things. One, it was due to a misconfiguration of firewall, as well as an insider threat. And this misconfiguration was known because this insider threat knew about the misconfiguration. But essentially, you have to consider here, well, 1, was your cybersecurity professionally set up? And 2, do your employees have more access to information than they should? And this has really serious consequences because if you think about for a small business, you may have very few people, you may know them very intimately. But if you're a giant company that you don't know the name of half the people that work for you, it's really important to make sure that you're hiring the right people and making sure that they are motivated to not betray you. And especially in a large company sense, when the person making the cybersecurity decisions is very different from the person who actually owns or runs the company, you have to consider your job placement because as we saw with Capital One, almost every single one of their cybersecurity and technology management positions opened up right after this. You can see this was taken July 30th, the same day that article that I showed you was written. So there are some real consequences for the decision makers. This isn't just entirely for people who own or are sitting on boards or are running businesses. This is also for people purely in cybersecurity management. So they have to really consider the supply chain for Capital One. That supply chain was the development cycle of their digital product. So effectively here, we've talked about 3 different points, 3 and 4 on the last one. Public exposure of information and data with our examples from the fingerprint of the German defense minister and keys that can be easily copied. We talked about the supply chain vulnerability with the Supermicro example and how China was able to invade, 2 of America's largest companies, Apple and Amazon, among many others that were using those servers, and both digital and insider threats that we saw in the recent Capital One example with how a insider threat was able to exploit a digital vulnerability that was only known to this insider, enabling them to collect hundreds of millions of Americans' data. Connor, you want to talk about what this means for a small business?
Sure. And wow, those were some awesome examples. Some of them I actually didn't didn't know a lot about it. Didn't know all that stuff was internal at Capital One. But before I talk about how I can make how small businesses should adapt some of these things that they could so they can apply it in their daily lives, can you go back to the different points of attack slide? I'd like to ask actually Dr. Novuschin a question. He might have some great things to say on this. So there are three types of attacks right here: public exposure of information, supply chain vulnerability, digital insider threats. And I mean, although the threats that Capital One and Supermicro and that the German defense minister are facing are not exactly what a small business would face. Do you think, what do you think are some ways that a small business would face threats that would fall into these categories?
Uh, you're saying, because yeah, when I think of these, we talked a lot today about what I call physical security. I think that, and I think that it depends on your business. Probably most small businesses in America are not really thinking that much about physical security because when you imagine who's coming after you, I think it's a, Yugoslavian bot farm or something. And I think that, and honestly, you folks are going to face ransomware and people coming after your firewalls, and there are just thousands of attacks going on every day that are automated. So I tend to see kind of a spectrum in my mind from the attacks that are easiest to pull off are going to be tried by hundreds of thousands of hackers across the world on as many people as they can get the information for. Versus on the other side of the spectrum is attacks that are difficult to pull off, takes some intentional planning. You really have to pick a business and you're going after that business in particular. And so the more sensitive the data you deal with, if your company handles the data of a larger third party, then you get a target on your back because all of a sudden you're a third party provider for a big multinational. Now people are going to be customizing their attacks just for you and your staff and your workflow, versus if you are relatively under the radar, there's no reason for any particular bad actor to point out your company or to target your company in particular, then you're going to face the standard onslaught of the thousands of paper cut attacks. And I think we maybe talked a little bit more about how you fight those in week one with the phishing and the spear phishing and password management. And so I think that setting security as a lifestyle inside of the company, I think you'll know how big the target on your back is, but everyone should have certain instincts towards security that no matter how small the target on your back is, you need to keep in mind. And particularly when that comes to how you handle your login credentials, how you handle any sort of personally identifiable information and so on. The insider threats also, that if you have Chinese nationals working for you, the Chinese national government directly aims at incentivizing with large cash incentives the export of valuable business intel out of the country by way of employees. And this is, we might talk about this on a future podcast, but there is a national game in this also.
Wow. If you had to name a couple of the, let's call them the lowest hanging fruits that small businesses could incorporate, if you had to list a couple of things that would make themselves instantly more secure, in your own words, reduce the target on their backs per se, or at least the probability that someone attempts to hack them or that their information is stolen. What do you think a couple of easy to do things would be that businesses could adapt like today?
Sure. So probably one of the easiest things to do is have Anchor Security come do a quick cyber audit for free through the Small Business Development Center. Namely, if you have a website and you're taking payments, and that website is using an old WordPress platform or even some other content management system, what the bot farms will do is they'll scan any of your public facing web interfaces for the type of software you're using, take any known vulnerabilities of those softwares, and if there's a known one, then there exists some script they can use to get through that known vulnerability. And it's easy for you to fix that, and we can run a report for you and say, okay, here are the things to upgrade, and this will make you 90% more secure. So making sure that anything you've got that's public facing on your networks has the latest updates. Anytime you've got an OS or browser update, do it. But particularly anything that any servers you've got that are facing the wider world, those cannot be outdated. Beyond that, internally, having good prevention of phishing attacks by training your employees well, making sure they stay trained and up to date and sharpened by doing your own social engineering of your own employees, which is another thing that we can help with. And I would say password management systems. So, you should expect that if you've got the same password used on many different sites, that password is in the banks of passwords that get tried by every starting hacker in a third world country that would love to even just squeeze out a couple of dollars from some private information.
Wow, those are awesome. I didn't even think about using a couple of those, but those are actually pretty easy to implement on a daily basis. Just things like making sure your WordPress site is updated. I mean, I know I've met a lot of people who have issues with their WordPress website. Either it gets some bad software on there and redirects into 100 million different places to click farms and stuff like that, and then you lose control of your website, or even something more serious that you just discussed, where if you have, let's say, WooCommerce, which I know is a really popular payment processor for WordPress, if you have that on your website and you don't update it, there's a possibility that some of your clients' information is getting stolen or maybe siphoned off. So yeah, a lot of great things to talk about. We also have in the description, if you guys notice that if you look at the description of this webinar, a workbook that actually was released by the SB in partnership with the SBDC and us, that actually recently won an award at a national conference that was held by NIST. So I'd highly recommend going and taking a look at that. We're offering it for free, so you can just download it and go through it with either by yourself or maybe with your employees. I'd say that is probably the easiest way to get secure. And it goes over some very common sense things that maybe you just haven't thought about, because a lot of people, I know that for most people that security is not at the forefront of their mind. And so if you're not thinking about it, sometimes you just forget best practices somehow. So if you go take a look at that workbook, and it covers things like how to store your data safely, how to make sure your employees have access only to what they need and not to everything in your entire company, and your software, your hardware, things that you're doing. So some really simple ways that you could fix it immediately. But let's go over to a couple more things that you could do to make security a part of your lifestyle. Because really, if you wanted to put security in the forefront of your mind, you're going to need to make it a part of your lifestyle. And I know that probably doesn't sound too great to a lot of people. Making cybersecurity a part of your lifestyle sounds like a bore, or it sounds hard, but it's really none of those things. It's very simple. It starts with very simple, small things that you can do right now that will secure yourself, your own company, and allow your clients, more importantly, allow your clients to have more trust in you. So if you can prove, or you can tell them with confidence that their data is secure with you, that nothing's going to happen, then they'll probably be more likely to do business with you. I don't know if you saw it earlier in the presentation, but there was a point that was in red that we saw that Amazon and Apple's supply chain was hacked. But I know for a fact, people like my mom use Amazon. I got 100 packages a day showing up on my doorstep. If Apple or Amazon is some part of their supply chain is hacked, I guarantee that you will continue to use Apple, you will continue to use Amazon. and you will buy their services and their products, and you're not going to change. You might not even hear about it, might not even get the news, might not even get to you, but you won't change if Apple or Amazon gets hacked. But what if you're a small business and it becomes news that you get hacked? What are your clients going to do? Your clients are probably going to be more likely, if you got hacked in some way, to not use you. I mean, as a small business, I'm sure you are all aware that your reputation is what you live by. You take pride in your reputation. You take pride in the services that you offer. So if you're able to make security a part of your lifestyle, you can have more confidence that your clients' data, that your data, that you are keeping them safe, and that you're not at risk of losing that hard-earned reputation that you've spent so long to build. So let's go over a couple quick things that you could do. We talked about supply chains, review your service provider and manufacturer, private security policies. Simple is to limit the amount of people in your supply chain. So if you know from start to finish, from the raw materials that are needed for your product, or maybe you offer service, if you know the people that started that service, so maybe you have an advertising company, if you can shorten that, maybe bring that in-house, maybe you could find a way to do that, or maybe you know somebody that could do that with you that you trust. If you can just reduce the amount of people in your supply chain. So maybe you spend 5 minutes and you try to write down, okay, I need to know from start to finish, from customer looking at our ads, from customer seeing our product online, to purchasing, what does it take to get that product from them wanting it in their minds to their doorstep, or to your doorstep, and you meet them. So just figure out, or take some time and note how long that supply chain is, and see if you can find ways to reduce it. That'd be a quick, easy way to do it. The next is ensure your cybersecurity is handled professionally and set up properly. That's a lot easier to do, to get off the ground, I should say, than it should be. Things like updating your software, making sure that you have at least some firewalls on your network, making sure that you don't have a Wi-Fi network with no password, or maybe that your Wi-Fi password is not public, or it's not taped to your door, or something like that. It starts there, making sure that the information you have is being kept safe, and that your clients can trust you with that. So really, really easy things like that. Also, running routine penetration tests. So Andy mentioned earlier, Anchor Security offers free security audits to any company that is within a certain radius of us, of Delaware. We will come into your company. We will do a quick 1 hour max audit. We will run a bunch of tests. We'll ask you a bunch of questions, and then you will get an entirely comprehensive report tailored directly to your business, where we will point out some flaws. And then we will not only recommend some products we offer that can help you reconcile those flaws, but also some simple things you can do, like locking your doors. Some companies forget to lock their doors at night, so we actually ask that question. So if we end up doing a security audit for you, we will ask you that question. Or not leaving your computers unlocked. Really easy, simple stuff like that maybe you might have passed over, glossed over, not really thought about initially. Little things like that go a very long way to securing your company, to increasing your cybersecurity to a almost professional level. And we will come do that for you guys. So if you wanted to, you can, the link to apply for an audit is actually in the description. It's our website name, anchorsecurityteam.com/audit. And you are more than free to fill out a form. We will come give you a free audit. And the last thing that you could do is ensure that you don't have any unwanted exposed data or information that could allow bad actors to harm your business. To bring up Andy's WordPress example, if you have a WordPress account with a really bad password, so if you're listening to this and your password is password, or QWERTY, or 1234, or any variation of any very commonly used password, you should probably change that to something more secure right now. All it would take is one hacker. And like Andy said, if you're on WordPress, if you have outdated extensions and stuff like that, you're not updating them regularly, you are a target, because you are easily hackable. And so it wouldn't take a lot for a hacker to guess that easy password and then get into your website. And all of a sudden, all of the information that is stored on your website, all of the valuable lead generation your website's doing is in that hacker's hand. And that's not what you want at all. It could take years to repair that, not only from a cyber level, from getting that website back, getting all those clients back, but it could take even longer to get your reputation back to where you'd like it. So those are really a couple easy things that you can do. If you have any questions about your business, or like I said, you'd like to apply for a free audit, or you'd like to download the workbook, please give us a call. We'd be happy. You can send us an email at hello@anchorsecurityteam.com. We'd be more than happy to give you some advice, come and do an audit. And like I said, download the workbook or get an audit. That's pretty much everything I could suggest right now. I'm sure that you guys will have some instant examples that you could put into place about how you could more easily secure your business, maybe even like turn your computer screen around so that if someone walks into your offices, they can't just see everything you're doing. It's a really easy one that a lot of people overlook. But Jamie, do you have any other closing words for us, or any other words of advice for small businesses before we get off here?
Yes, I do. I think it's pretty much understood that small businesses are a very substantial target for cybersecurity threats, and the reason is that often small businesses are the least protected of businesses. And I interact with a lot of small business owners, and in general, the majority of the small business owners that I interact with are not really prepared, or not really aware, and have not, or are not thinking much about cybersecurity. And as we move forward, the threats are going to continue to grow. And so, what we've talked about on the webinar today is that, increasing your level of protection as a small business owner, there are many very simple and very quick things that you can do and that you can implement in your business, and also with your staff, and they're not all that difficult. And so I think the biggest issue is to increase your awareness as a small business owner of the cyber security landscape, and in particular the things that you can do as a small business owner to protect your business, and in reality protect your customers that are giving you sensitive data as well. And so I think the two suggestions were great on the webinar. One is absolutely go sign up for a free cybersecurity audit. It costs you nothing, and there's no risk to you, and you will get an enormous amount of valuable data about the vulnerabilities in your systems to cyber threats. And we give you that, for free, and we have a team that goes around and does that. And then also, absolutely, I would encourage you to download the free cyber workbook. It is designed for small business owners, and we're very, very excited about our partnership with the Small Business Development Center, and working with the Small Business Development Center to really protect owners. It's a great workbook. It's very thorough. It's a great start. Won a national award, so we were pretty excited about that. So I would encourage that if you have not done so, to go ahead and download that. And certainly, if you have any other questions, you can reach out to us. I mean, we are passionate about helping small businesses to really become cybersecurity safe. So great job, everybody. Thanks for being a part, and glad that you were able to join us. And we look forward to seeing you on our next webinar. All right, thanks, everyone.